I think we're live.
All
Hey,
right, we are live. Hey, friends. Well, welcome. Welcome to Should I Stay or Should I Go? My name, if you don't know it, is John Pavlovitz. I'm an author, activist, and speaker from Wake Forest, North Carolina. And the genesis of this gathering, first of all, hi to everyone who's joining us all around the country. So great to see you all checking in. Please drop a note in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from. You're going to have a chance to ask questions, talk about anything that's on your mind, to really be as open and honest as you need to be. This is a safe place to do that. But the genesis of this gathering is that so many of my readers and followers, many of you, have been asking me questions talking about the tensions of being in America at this place in time in its history. And many of you are thinking about things that you might never have thought about before. And the idea of an international move is suddenly a reality for you. And so I wanted to say a couple of things as we begin. One of the things I wanted to make sure that you hear is that this is not a it's time to get out of America conversation, right? You know that I speak and write about staying where you are often and fighting for what you believe in, crafting the nation that you want to see, and that these things are vital, but also given circumstances when those circumstances change. For many people, because of their life stage or for safety reasons or health reasons, this is actually a time when they need to dig deep in these conversations and ask questions and investigate a little. So I wanted to have a place for us to do that, but I needed an expert. I needed someone who knew what they were talking about. And I have the perfect person here co-hosting with me. Her name is Colleen Showalter, and she is a relocation specialist. She is the co-founder and CEO of Portugal, the Place, which is a company that specializes in people who want to make Portugal their home. And I'm going to let Colleen introduce herself, share a little bit about her story. But Colleen, thank you so much for co-hosting this with me, and welcome, friend.
thank you so much. I am just so honored and pleased to be here. This is fantastic. We're with Portugal, the Place. We have a company in Portugal. We're located in Alcobaça, which is on the Silver Coast, right in the center of Portugal. And what we do is we help folks relocate throughout the entire process. And my husband and I, we co-founded it, and we moved to Portugal 5 years ago, along with our large 150-pound Newfie-doodle and my father, who at the time was 80 years old. And we relocated here to Portugal, for another chapter. And we realized when we saw the need for folks to be supported when they're looking to relocate to Europe, that there's a lot of things that are different. And there's a lot of gaps in understanding of how to get things accomplished. And so we reached in and leaned forward and said, let's see how we can help. And today we've served over 2,000 clients and helped families and countless people move all over Portugal. So excited to share our experience and learn more about yours and answer as many questions as we can.
Yeah, Colleen, tell me something as we begin. What brought you to Portugal to begin with, and what kept you there? Why have you made that your home and then your base of the work that you do?
Yes, that's a great question. My husband and I had always dreamed of living in Europe someday. We've traveled extensively in our life. We felt that it's so important for our children to have that experience. So it's been a really important part of our life. But we'd always kind of imagined ourselves in Italy or France. I think that's very typical of Americans. We have that certain kind of idea. And
Sure.
Then we went on a small vacation we had some miles to use, and we came to Lisbon on a short vacation in 2019. And it just had a feeling. There was just something about the people and the generosity of spirit and the way you feel when you're in Portugal. And we went home thinking, oh, that was great. Never thought about moving ever. I'm in like the thick of the career, you're in the middle of raising kids. And then COVID hit. We're one of those people, our whole lives got turned upside down. Everything changed. We saw an opportunity and we said, what if we don't wait? What if we sell everything we own, take the dad, take the dog, take the kid, and move to this country that we really don't know much about, but we are willing to open our minds and learn. And so we chose Portugal, but I actually think Portugal chose us. When we got here, we felt more at home here than anywhere we've ever lived in our lives.
Well, and I think our family got to take a trip to Portugal. And it's funny because the way that we met was we were going to be taking a trip just as a family trip abroad. And then we started to just think about some of the things that we'll be talking about today. And I started looking online at message boards and Facebook groups about Portugal specifically, just trying to find the cool places to go and asking some questions. And so many expats there kept saying, you need to talk to Portugal, the place. You need to talk to Portugal, the place. So I Googled that and found out, the kind of work that you did and was able to come over to Portugal with your assistance and meeting you and your team. And it was just such a beautiful experience just to take a trip where you're not a tourist, where you are someone who needs to understand the culture and wants to be a part of experiencing the true vital life of a country where you're traveling. And so you were so helpful in that. And we experienced so much about Portugal in that way too. It is a place of just such warmth, and it embraces you, and it was beautiful.
But it doesn't unfold easily. I think one of the things Portugal gets difficult for people is because, unlike France, unlike Spain, unlike other European countries that we have such a deep amount of immigrants in the United States from, where their food and a lot of language is integrated into our own culture, Portugal is kind of off to the side, unless you're from Fall River, unless you're from like the Northeast or certain areas, New Jersey, Miami, that have Portuguese communities. We don't get the exposure to the Portuguese culture the same way in the United States. So I think it throws people for a loop, and it's a little bit like, wait, what do I know about Portugal? Do I know anything about Portugal? And then it unfolds to you as you dig in and you learn more, and you're like, wow. But it isn't a country that you can necessarily like understand right away. It takes a little more leaning in. And I think that's sometimes confusing for people when they're researching online, especially. It's like, do I like this? Do I know this? What does this mean? Whereas
That's right.
Italy, France, we have more familiarity with.
Yeah, exactly. Colleen, let's look at this whole thing from 30,000 feet for many people who just are beginning this process. And when people come to you in the beginning and they're just kind of exploring the idea of moving internationally, moving to Europe, for example, and they're just overwhelmed. They have no idea even what questions to ask. Their heads are spinning. Where do you begin with them? What are some fundamental questions you have them ask, or things you'd like them to consider? Walk us through that a bit.
Well, it's really first and foremost understanding who you are and what it is you're looking to have as an experience. Because we have an idea, and Clyde, my husband, will laugh about this all the time. I am one of those people that have like the movie version in my head. I have a soundtrack when I go places. I want the windows that open and the fluttering curtains and the whole bit. And the reality is that's not how is going to go. And I think trying to separate the idea of the influencer's version of what you're looking at, and then helping yourself understand what you want. And for a lot of people, that's a big conversation. They know they want something different, but when you say, what do you want your life to be like a year after you move? You're thinking about moving. It's very exciting to move. You're very excited to get in your new house and do all that. But after all that's over with, you still have a life, right? You're still a human. You still have connections. What do you want that life to be, and how do you want to approach this new chapter? So it's really going backwards first and saying, what's motivating you? What do you think you want? And then what have you not thought about before we talk about locations, budget, all of that? And that really applies for if you're comparing Portugal to Spain, Spain to Italy. What is it that you think you want your life to look like in those next years? And really sit down and kind of process that, because we were talking about this earlier. You can kind of run away from something like large government changes or things you feel afraid of. But if you're running from something that you can't identify, like you're unsettled, that's going to come with you if you don't kind of dig in and figure out what it is. So we really encourage people to look at what they want to go towards and what that is that they want.
Yeah, that was huge in just the time getting to know you and your family and your team. And by the way, Fiona is on as our admin, doing great work. And if you have any stuff in the chat you need to share with her, she'll pass that on to us, questions, thoughts, anything like that. So wanted to make sure you knew that. But I started to really think about the people who I speak to every day. And there is a high level of anxiety right now for all sorts of reasons. However, you and I have often talked about the idea that you definitely are not trying to run away from something. This has to be about running to something. It has to be about a life affirming decision that you're doing. Now, you may have all those other concerns, but the real heart of it is that you want to live in another culture. And I think we agree on this. You want to be a part of that culture, not take your American lifestyle there and franchise it out. You want to make sure you're immersed in another place because you want to really contribute to the community.
And one of the things as an American living abroad, and something everyone should consider when you're either here or part of becoming a part of a culture in any other part of the world, we are ambassadors for the United States now. We speak for the American people. People are desperately asking what's happening. They're either looking for confirmation that Americans are not someone they want to be around, or they're looking for the opportunity to change what they're seeing. Oh, you're really nice. Oh, you're really,
yeah.
You're not hard to talk to, that kind of thing. And so it does add an added layer, because we come in hot. When you come into a community, you're an American, and people are curious. They want to know what's going on. They expect you to have all the answers. So it is a responsibility when you leave and when you look to a new country. How can you contribute there? How can you check your American kind of privilege and appreciate being comfortable with being uncomfortable? And that's where we can all do better and continue to strive to be part of the local community. All right, John, I think we've got questions coming.
Awesome. Let's go. This will be great. Fantastic.
Let's go. Okay, so it looks like we have a question. How long does it usually take for approval of a D7 visa once you submit it to the Portuguese embassy in DC? So depending on the different consulates that you apply from, and I know we have people from different countries, so you do need to apply from your home country, and each consulate has a little bit of different timeline. But in general, right now for the United States, we're looking at 90 days for your temporary visa permit, which is the first step of your visa to be approved. So you can plan on 90 days. That seems to be realistic. We're seeing them come in between 70 and 90 days. Washington, D.C. is sitting squarely in that. We're talking with the consulate in Mexico City, for example, and they're running around for Central America and Mexico more around 65. So depending on your home country, you want to double check, but a rule of thumb, 90 days. All right.
And Colleen, I was looking at some questions too, and I want to make sure I don't skip over people. So I just going to grab one that I see. Jenna Marsh says Portugal is trans friendly. Correct. Talk about Portugal and its LGBTQ plus embrace.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that brought us to Portugal. Our family was looking for a place that was safe and that people could live in peace and be who they are. And we have found that to be 100% true. I'm very proud of the fact that over 40% of our clients are from the trans and LGBTQ community. And what they're finding is that Portugal is peaceful, it's calm. And what I mean by that is Portugal doesn't make a big deal about it, about any of it. People just live. It's like the best case scenario. Like, you've got a gay couple living next to you. You may have trans people coming and going. You may have nobody's trying to label anyone. Everyone just lives and coexists. And I think that's it's not perfect. I mean, obviously human beings are who we are, but the country as a whole and the communities have been wonderful, embracing people, and there's a sense of safety. And for our trans community, it's one of the things that we can lift you up and help you feel that you can be in a place where you can be yourself and not feel like you're a target.
Let's see. And I'll try taking these in order. Okay. So the question came in about a D7 visa. And if we could back up a little bit, if you could help folks understand, looking at Portugal, for example, there are a variety of visas, and for different people, different fits. Can you kind of give a broad overview of that so people can get an idea what their options may be?
Absolutely. And I'm going to work on a couple of acronyms for people too, because it gets a little confusing. You're going to be reading online about things like VFS, consulates, embassies. Those are kind of interchangeable words for who's going to be your first point of contact when you go to apply for a visa from your home country. VFS is a contractor that processes paperwork for the consulate. IMA IMA is the Immigration Bureau here in Portugal. That's your second appointment. That's who you meet with in Portugal. So I want to make sure we get that out there right away because we have some acronyms that get tossed around. The visas are referred to as D visas. So you can have everything from a D2 to a D9, and they all have different ways of qualifying. Primarily, most people are looking at the D7, which is a passive income visa. This means for you to qualify, you need to have some type of income, rental income, perhaps you have a pension, perhaps you have an annuity, perhaps you have disability from something. Anything that comes in without you actively working under a contract is counted as passive income. The D8 visa is the digital nomad visa, and that visa is exactly what that is. It means you can work in Portugal as long as your company allows it on either a W-2 or as a freelancer if you have contracts as a 1099. Those are the two most popular. You will also hear about the golden visa. That's the D9. That is a visa that is in a little bit of flux right now and is a much deeper conversation, but that's a investment visa that allows you to fast track your citizenship. There is a D2 visa, which is one type. There's D4s. There's all other kinds of things. I'm not going to go far into all of that, but I will tell you that 90% of our clients are using either the D7 or the D8. These are the passive or working income visas that allow you and your family to live as a resident and enjoy all the privileges and rights of being a resident of Portugal.
Okay. And Colleen, we have people who are obviously in all different stages of life and a lot of people with kids. And I want to see if you could share generally when thinking about a move abroad, living internationally, how do you walk people through that journey as a family? What are some things that they should be aware of or that you ask them to consider?
Absolutely. So you can apply with dependents and with a spouse and dependents, however you want to apply for these visas that I've referred to. And for minor children, they can move with you in that space. The way we talk about the family journey is a little different because depending on the age of your children and where they are and what stage, you know, the journey is going to look very different. But one of the first things we want to talk about is how you're going to approach that with your family. What is their level of engagement with their schools, with their after curricular programs, their friends? All of these kind of components have to be part of the equation. It's not just a one and done that is going to work if the children don't feel that they've participated at the appropriate level for their age. And it's tough. You have a teenager, right? I mean, it's not the easiest conversation when kids are thinking about being uprooted from what they know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because this is generally for anyone who's watching this, and I know some people have Portugal specific questions, others are just general, but for both of these circumstances, I think the difficulty is when knowing when to kind of push that button and to go forward and when to just stay where you are and weather that. And a lot of people are asking this being here in America and saying, well, how do I know when to go? Well, how do I know, what is the last straw? And I think that's such a personal decision. And before you answer that, I just want to share my thoughts doing the work that I do and to everybody here is that your biggest responsibility is to get up every day and to say, what kind of life do I want for myself, for people I love, and for strangers? And can I participate in that wherever I am? Absolutely. You can work for justice and equality anywhere that you find yourself. And you may want to think about where can you do that in the safest way? Can you do that in a place where your rights are more guaranteed, where healthcare is better, where education is better? So these are all things to think about. It's not just, do I stay or should I go in a binary choice? It's what kind of life can I see myself living? And knowing that I'm going to be a compassionate, deeply passionate human being wherever I am. So right. As much as we take the negative things with us, we take those best parts of us too. So if you're watching this and you say, I have some guilt about leaving, I would say to realize that you are going to be a part of whatever small portion of the world you find yourself, and to just kind of be stepping toward that. You can, explore this idea and live where you are doing all the things that you're doing. So it's not an either or, it's a both and, right?
No, and I had that guilt. I definitely did. I was very involved with activism when I lived in the United States. I attended multiple marches and protests and worked in the nonprofit sector. So stepping away and protecting my family, which is truly how it has felt, with my daughter and with the things that we were concerned about, I feel it. It feels like you have this privilege of closing the door on something and saying, I don't need that. But honestly, no matter where you are in the world, we have a responsibility to show up. And even there were No Kings protests all over Europe.
That's right.
Lisbon had people there. We vote from abroad. It's very important that we continue to have our voice heard, because rescinding citizenship is not easy. First off, you need to be in the country for at least 5 years to be able to apply for Portuguese citizenship and pass a language test, for example. And then the United States taxes you on citizenship, not residency. So you are a citizen no matter where you live. And if you want to rescind your citizenship, they will take 20% of all of your assets up front to give you that privilege. So it's not something you can just walk away and say, I'm not American anymore. So we have a right. We have a constitutional right to vote. We have a right to have a voice no matter where we live. And you can participate in all kinds of support programs, activism all over the world. It certainly doesn't stop just because of your location.
Yeah, great. Deborah has a question. My husband and I want to get out from under Trump's regime. Congress is going to pass legislation that will harm retirees, among other groups of vulnerable people. Are there other older expats who relocate to Portugal and expect to spend the rest of their lives there?
Yes. In fact, my father moved with us when he was 81. He passed away in 2023. He had the best years. They were gifted back. He actually seemed like he got younger while he was here, and he had the time of his life. And his quote will stay with me forever. He said, I don't want to spend my last chapter in a recliner watching NCIS. And he didn't. He gave it his all, and he had an amazing experience. We have clients that are in their 80s that have relocated here. We have a fantastic client who's taking the bull by the horns and moving to the Algarve, and she's 76 years old, and she's just like, let's do it. She's moving. Age is a number. I have clients that are in their 40s that seem like they are in their 80s, and they're really overwhelmed with the idea that they have to kind of get aggressive into this like knowledge base of newness. So really your age doesn't dictate it. Now, health is a concern. If you have some mobility issues, Europe in general is a challenge. If you're in a wheelchair, if you have stability issues with walking, there are ways to mitigate it. They're certainly becoming better and better, but it's an old place. And, it is a little bit more difficult to navigate no matter where you're looking. So age, not the one thing I'd worry about. It's more about what do you think that you're able to, bring in and manage with a move.
Great. And I see, and we're getting a ton of Portugal specific questions, which is great. For those of you who aren't Portugal specific right now, just sit tight and we'll be bouncing back and forth. But there's some questions on steps to get residency in Portugal. And a question's really about the whole process and maybe from the beginning, how that process unfolds. How long can you expect it to take before you are sitting in Portugal in a home?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of variables, but if we're going to take the most common process, you're going to be looking at about a year. And that's really frustrating for a lot of people to hear right now because of the anxiety that so many folks are under with what's happening. But the reality is we have to get our house in order in the States. You have to get your paperwork ready for your move. And this applies for many countries. Now, Albania, for example, is a country that's allowing folks to move for a year. They can go for 1 year without applying for a visa. You can just pack some suitcases and go there for a year. There are some other countries in Europe that have some different rules, but in general, the most popular countries, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, there is a process that takes about a year before you can physically move. So what you need to do is make sure that you're able to financially qualify. There are financial minimums for the D7 is the lowest entry country, and that's going to be for a single person. You have to meet the minimum wage of Portugal. That's just at 900 euros a month, and you have to have an equivalent to 1 year of that in a Portuguese bank account, and you have to have an accommodation secured for a year. You have to legal lease. That's like the barest minimum. All of these things take some months to put into order. And so we expect people, if you know that you want to live here in June of 2026, then right now is when you start exploring, looking at your finances, figuring out your budget, where you want to target, what schools. And then about 6 months before you want to leave is when we kind of like kick in and start the physical process of pulling the paperwork, getting the lease, that kind of thing.
Great, great. And I did want to make sure that folks watching, Portugal the Place has put together a promo code for you. If you would this be on the website that they can use this?
Yeah, and Fiona's going to run it across the bottom here as well. So all they need to do when they schedule a call is just let us know the promo code, and then that'll apply. So that the calls are free. Don't worry, you can give us a call and talk about the idea. But if you decide to move forward with the service, then that'll have that promo code applied. So absolutely.
Great. Okay, fantastic.
And I think, sorry, I'm sorry. There was one question, somebody caught my eye, and I can answer quickly. There is no half-time residency. There isn't an option to come and stay 6 months in, 6 months out. That's not a possibility. You have a tourist visa of 90 days, or you need to apply for a residency visa to live as a resident in Portugal.
Okay, fantastic. I did see a couple questions on
moving
pets.
Yeah.
I did see questions about dogs and pets. Now, many families, as in mine, my wife would probably be okay with the rest of us staying here as long as she could get her dog. So talk about the logistical challenge of moving abroad with pets.
Yes, well, we did it all. We moved with a huge dog. So we really understand it. We move clients all the time, dogs, cats, horses, parrots. You can move your pet. It is a logistic piece that you need to be prepared for. The main thing is there are some restrictions on the airline side on the type of breeds that can fly from a dog's point of view. Flat-faced dogs, for example, the airlines are very, very cautious about taking them on the planes due to the breeding. There are some breed restrictions that Portugal has along with the EU. There are certain breeds that may need extra paperwork. And if you have reptiles are the hardest one because they don't want any, there's no poisonous snakes, for example, in Portugal, and they don't want any. So they're not really big fans of reptiles. That's like, you can move a turtle, that we figured out, but snakes, not so much. But your other furry friends, rabbits, cats, dogs, it's just, there is a process. The thing is, you have to, again, layer that into your timing. It will reduce the accommodations that you can find if you're planning to rent, because they may have less available that take pets. But beyond that, Portugal is very welcoming, lots of veterinarian services and all the services you need for animals. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's coordinating the process and preparing for the financial part. It's going to cost you at least a couple thousand by the time you've done the vet, paid for the ticket for the pet, all of the things you need. You're going to need to put that in the budget.
Okay, great. And I see some questions here. I'm a retired widow with passive income. My daughter and her 3 teenagers want to emigrate as well. What are their options?
Well, if your daughter has any passive income, then that would, of course, be one option. For if she's working and can work remotely, then that would be another option as well. But if she doesn't have any stream of income that is movable, if it can't go with her, at that point, there would need to be either a student visa, for example. She'd need to go back to school and enroll and pay for some type of schooling that would allow her to move. But you do need some income source that can go with you to the country to apply for one of the residence visas. So if she had rental income, if there was some other income sources she has, but she would need to be able to prove that.
Great. And one of the things I was thinking about is can you speak to the relationship between, let's say, Portugal and other countries in the EU, because there are options to when you move abroad that you can really have access to other countries that you necessarily just the country you enter too.
Yeah, I mean, the Schengen, if you're not familiar, there are 28 countries that you can travel to once you become a resident card holder. And eventually, if you want to be a citizen of Portugal, that is part of the rights of being part of this community. And it allows you free travel. It's almost like moving back and forth between states. We just went to Rome. Fiona and I went to Rome this last week. And, you travel truly like a state. They don't check anything. You just get off the plane in Rome and come back. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to move to Europe, is we wanted the exposure, the opportunity to get on a plane for 2.5 hours and be in another amazing place and have that access. So that's one of the things you can consider when you're looking at most of the countries in Europe, is what you will be able to do once you're here and what that looks like. So it's a great.
Yeah, I talked to a few people who said, we chose Portugal, for example, as our home base, but we almost look at it the way we looked at being able in the United States and being able to travel to Texas or North Carolina very easily. We can now do that with Spain and France. So it's just really a cool mindset switch.
We flew out of Lisbon, I was laughing in my mind because I was thinking that the distance from Lisbon to Rome was the same as me flying to Vegas from Portland, because I was from Portland, Oregon. And so I'm like, Vegas, Rome. Okay.
And what do you think, Colleen, is when people are thinking about, you touched on it a bit, but what are the biggest misconceptions that people have about the idea or about the process of moving? And what were some of the things that you were surprised by before you were an expert in all this?
Well, the thing that I'm most surprised by, which I've adjusted to, is just how much stuff we think we need in the United States and how much less you have. I'm going to use a grocery store for an example. A grocery store in Portugal does not have an entire aisle of salad dressings in every flavor known to man. You have some salad dressings, and there's like 4 different kinds. And if you don't like those, you make your own. It's a very different mentality. The grocery stores are well stocked. You have great food, but it's fresh. It's local in many cases. And it isn't this, just you have to have everything available to you. And that was a little bit to get adjusted to. The fact that if I wanted to go out and go shopping for clothes, for example, I don't have just everything at my fingertips, Amazon delivering in 2 hours. It's more intentional. That was a big surprise on how much consumerism that I kind of bought into in the US that I can step away from. And I think the other thing is the fact that people don't need to spend money to be entertained here. How much stuff is free in Portugal and in Europe in general, how you have access to these beautiful parks and gardens. And my friends and Portuguese folks that I live in and commune with now, their favorite thing to do is to take a bottle of wine, maybe they get some little snacks, go and watch the sunset in Porto and hang out and listen to street musicians. There's a community feeling, and it's not about how much you own, what your car looks like, what your bag is that you're carrying. It's more about the experiences and connections you're making. And that took a little bit to realize that I bought into a lot of this idea that I must have this, I must be seen with that. It's a very different mindset here.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're getting some Portugal specific, and people asking why this is Portugal specific. It is not Portugal specific, but our expert today, Colleen Showalter, is definitely an expert in a move to Portugal. And that's why a lot of the questions are coming in to that end. But I want to make sure that if you feel like just generally you have a question, please put it in the chat. We'd love to respond to that. But a couple of Portugal specific questions. Can you stay in Portugal permanently on the student visa? This is from Jennifer.
The student visa is one that you would have to be enrolled in school. And as long as you're enrolled in a Portuguese school, trade school, Portuguese university, college, it doesn't have to be just one type of school. You can stay in Portugal. The second that you are no longer a student, then you'll need to convert to some other type of visa.
Okay, and Kathy says, speak to the quality and access to healthcare, which is obviously a huge concern, and maybe perspective that you have on Europe in general, but what's it like to attain healthcare? What do you have to do when you're moving? How does that actually work? Someone said, I'm on Medicaid now. How does that transfer?
Yeah, it doesn't transfer. So
Right.
that one's an easy answer, but there's a lot of different opportunities across Europe, and each country in Europe is different. For example, Switzerland has an entirely different system than Sweden. So it's difficult to kind of do blanket conversation about Europe, but there's some things with the socialist countries that you can depend on, and that is that they believe that through the taxes that they apply, that people on a whole should receive benefits for that. And one of the big things that confuses Americans when we come to Europe, and Portugal is one of these countries, is when you get private insurance, it will tell you you don't have coverage for a heart attack, and you're like, what do you mean I don't have emergency coverage for a heart attack? It's because everybody has the right to coverage in the case of a heart attack. So if you have a heart attack and the closest hospital is a private hospital, it functions as a public hospital. You go and you get taken care of because you're part of the system. Same as, many Americans have decided, do I take an Uber or an ambulance when they've gotten hurt? You don't do that here. Ambulances are part of your rights and privileges as a resident here. And so there is no ambulance coverage. There's no coverage in your private health insurance for your prescription drugs, because every Portuguese resident has the same price, and they're regulated. And so you pay, for example, for a round of antibiotics for an ear infection that I just helped someone get, it was €3. So, so it is, my father was a diabetic and he had a lot of health issues. He took a lot of medicine, heart, lung, all kinds of stuff. He took about 15 different prescriptions, all the insulin and all his hard, durable medical equipment. In the United States, his monthly copay was €850 without the durable medical, like the needles and things like that. Here, for a 3-month supply, cash pay, before he was on the system, it was €225 for 3-month supply, including the durable medical equipment. So it's a game changer. The prescription, it makes you angry, actually. I can feel my blood pressure start to go up because the care and the idea that everyone has a right to fundamental care is a totally different approach. But the public system is swamped. The public system is crazy busy after COVID, just like everywhere else in the world. Europe has taken a huge hit on qualified workers. And so all of the systems, the public systems, are in a crunch time. There's short doctors, there's short nurses, and there's long wait times. It can be difficult for non-emergent procedures to get scheduled. So most of us that are here, we're using private insurance and having some really great experiences, but we try to avoid burdening the public system.
Okay, fantastic. Let's see. Okay, question 2 for me. One fine gentleman asked when I was leaving, because he was looking forward to me leaving, and someone else said, "Are you considering a move? We would hate to see you go." And I'll just speak personally from my, in my experience, it was about me saying, what are the possibilities in my life at my age, being 56, and saying, eventually I'm going to retire. Maybe I'm going to retire at the age I thought I was going to, but maybe that's going to be expedited a few years because of circumstances. So for me, it's really about exploring what are those options so that I'm educated about the process, because there is I think, Colleen, you could speak to this, there's a romanticism associated with the move. And then there's the pragmatic and the administrative logistical stuff. And then there's what I'm sure is a honeymoon and the end of that honeymoon. So anything you want to share about that would be great.
Yeah, the housing is probably the biggest romanticism that happens because of what we see and what we do on Airbnb vacations. Many of us have rented a holiday home or an apartment in a city, and we've had this amazing experience. You're in the middle of, some incredible neighborhood in whatever city in Europe you're in, and you're just basking in the walking out the front door and getting a croissant and all of that. The reality is, when you're coming to live, most people both don't have the means, and secondly, don't have the desire to be smack in the middle of these massive tourist destinations. For better or worse, a lot of these cities, the centers, are not the place that's the most comfortable to live. And most people in Europe don't live in those kind of Airbnb styled homes. The apartments are very different in the reality of what you get from day-to-day life and what they look like and how they feel. Those romantic looking houses with the little balconies and the beautiful windows and the stone are cold inside. They're cold. It's thick stone walls. It's like, you're like, whoa, what's going on here? And, you get into these little streets and they're so romantic, but then, you're like, I have to walk how far to bring my groceries? I mean, it's definitely, there's the romantic side and the reality check. And if you can get into the idea that you want to live like a local, then living like a local is getting a sturdy apartment, one that offers great, comfort, accessibility, but you're living outside of the crazy tourism and you're really enjoying the reality of going to the local market, interacting with the local folks, going to the cafe around the corner that might not be as beautiful, but has great local food and all the fun time of getting to know the people you see every day. So I think we have to get out of the mode of wanting it to be under the Tuscan sun. It's not that. And
Yeah.
and I think that's hard and me too. I was totally, I'm all over that, but it isn't going to be the reality for most folks.
Yeah, and I think you can approach it the same way someone who would approach it if you are watching this and you want to move somewhere else in the US. If you're going to make a big move, you can actually say, well, what type of life do I want to have that maybe I'm not experiencing now? Maybe I want to be near a big city and have a lot of amenities, or maybe I want the open space that I'm not getting. Could you talk a little about, someone talked about living in the countryside in Portugal specifically, but just the options that are there and the diversity of experience.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of options. Portugal's a small country. It's the size of the state of Indiana, but it has a ton of different regions, cultural experiences, language variants. There's lots of dialects in Portugal, and you really can find something here for everyone. The large metropolitan area, Lisbon is a European capital, so it has all the things that go along with that. But there are opportunities if you're looking for a rural lifestyle, if you're looking for a really calm, quiet pace of life. There's a lot of interior spaces that will give you that. The thing to be real about and to understand is, yes, that's very romantic. Again, the first year setting up the place, decorating it, getting it going, doing all of that. But is it going to satisfy you for the long run? Are you going to have things that engage you? Because a lot of these rural areas are very remote. They're isolated. You won't have as much of an international community to connect with. So language could feel like you're isolated. And I think the reason people fail when they move abroad and they feel like they have to leave is not finances. It's not, a variety of things to do with the country. I think it's isolation, not finding your community. And community is what has helped so many people, I think, really feel like they've got their foothold in the country. So you have to be aware that dream of what you want, like the rural lifestyle, are you prepared for the fact that might bring you a little farther away from community?
Yeah, and I can lump a couple of things together that I've been seeing here, and one's regarding language. Do I need to speak Portuguese to move to Portugal? Do my kids need to? And also, if you could address that. And someone asked, do you just hang out with expats? And I'm sure that answer varies. But tell me about ideally what you would.
Yeah, one of our clients, I think I just saw Jessica came up and was talking about her little town, and they live in a space that, we really wanted to help them be in a spot with a walkability and access to an international community, but not feel like you're living in a tourist space. So that's a balance. And we really encourage people to look at that. If you're doing it in a way that feels good, you're going to start integrating Portuguese connections and international, because a lot of people think expat means just American, but what we've had is this incredible opening of friends from all over the world that we never had access to. And boy, it's mind blowing when you sit and have a dinner party with people from Australia, Singapore, Kenya, the UK, the United States, all over Europe, and everyone's got their point of view on politics, religion, all that. You're like, okay, I don't want to center myself. I just want to sit back and really take it all in. And it's so rewarding to be able to have that and that's what happens when you're in Europe. It doesn't have to be just Portugal, but it's a great feeling to get into these communities.
Thank you for that. Hillary says, posting this again because I think it got lost in the thread. I work remotely for an American accounting firm that will allow me to work from Portugal. However, I'm also a dance instructor. I am currently talking to a dance studio in Lisbon, but my question is, if I get part-time work in Portugal as a dance instructor, does that mean I have to give up my full-time job with my American employer because I am no longer the D8 visa?
No, people have all kinds of side gigs, all kinds of things going on. The thing is, when you apply for your visa, you have to have a stream of income that is consistent. It needs to have been for at least 3 months consistently deposited before you apply. And that's what they will count on your renewal as well. As far as getting a job, being a chef, a dance instructor, helping people surf, starting a business, anything like that, that's totally fine. That's what we did. I came over on a D7 with a stream of income and started our own business, and still am here on a D7. So it's completely possible.
Awesome. And Janet asked, this is a general question, I think, really. Is it recommended to sell everything with the exception of basic necessities? Is housing furnished? And you talked a little bit about stuff. And I think I have some friends who are expats, and they said, we decided to say, can we not live without? And everything else we left behind.
Yeah, and that's a big question for everyone, but I feel like that was one of the mistakes I made when we moved. I bought into this narrative that was online that we must be minimalists, and when you move, you must get rid of everything, and you shouldn't come with anything you can't carry in your suitcase. And so I did, and I regret it now, because I had always in my lifetime, I'm a lover of books. I've collected books my whole life, and I had thousands, quite literally. Fiona will be laughing because she's like, yep, I know that. And we had art from all over the world that we had collected in our travels, and we got rid of 90% of them, and some things that were gifts from family and my uncles and things in the past. And I didn't need to do that. And I regret it immensely, because I bought into this idea that I was somehow less of a person because I wanted to be sentimental. And the truth of the matter is there's no right way for anything to be done. It needs to be the right way for you. And if that item brings you joy, if you feel like it's part of your life, if it's going to make you feel like your home feels more comfortable because you get to see it on your shelf every day, it doesn't matter. Pack it, bring it. There's no right way. So yeah. I think the most important thing is just to be real. What can you afford to bring? If you have a baby grand, that would not be so practical, but it's what can you do to make it comfortable? And I will tell you, anywhere you move, when you're looking to move abroad, the day that you're moving and your stuff's coming later, in most cases, tuck stuff into your suitcase, a picture, a familiar item you've always had on your nightstand, things, the tea towels from your kitchen, that when you get to your new place, you can kind of place around, because you're going to feel homesick. There's going to be a moment where you're going to wish you had something familiar. And it's really nice to be able to look over and see consistency, something you've had next to you, for a very long time. So it's okay. And it's normal. It's not wrong to want to have your things.
Yeah. And it's fun. We met a family while we were in Portugal who were expats, and they took us out to lunch, and they were talking about their experience with their teenage children. And the father said, listen, no matter how much you plan, it's going to be difficult. There will be those times throughout that first year or so that you hit these bumps. And he said, and it's so valuable to have stuff around you, like you said, that brings you comfort and gives you a sense of place that maybe you don't have at that moment. And so that's really good advice.
It's
really
important. It's important to prepare for the fact that there's a phrase that I always use with my clients, and there's folks that are on here that probably already heard this, but a lot of folks plan for a move abroad like they're planning for a wedding. They're so excited about getting the visa together, getting all the components right, packing the suitcase, all of that. And they don't think about the marriage at all, like the next year, right? It's like, it's all about the wedding, not about the marriage. This is the same thing with the move. If you get too caught up in everything you have to do, which is valid, you got to get it all done, but you don't pay attention to the long-term part of it, it's going to trip you up, because it's going to feel difficult. Probably 75% at least of my clients get sick in some kind of way about a month after they arrive. After the adrenaline is down, after you've gotten through everything, and your body does whatever you do when stress is finally kind of caught up with you, they get colds, they get flu, they get stomach issues, they have horrible headaches, something is happening. And it's because our bodies have been like keyed up. It's a big thing. It's a moment. And then when it's not there anymore, you're like, Oh, and then whatever you've been pushing back, whatever you've been holding back to power through hits you. So my advice is if you're looking to move anywhere you're going right now, pack a comfort care package for yourself. Your favorite medicine, because it will trip you up. If you get to Europe on a vacation, if you get to Europe to move and you get sick and you go to the pharmacy, they're not going to have NyQuil. They're not going to have Tylenol. They're not going to have the brands, you're going to be frustrated. You don't feel good. You're trying to translate. You're going to maybe get medicine that works. Pack a comfort kit for yourself, even Kleenex, whatever it is, put it all together, prepare for the worst so that when you're not feeling well, when you wake up and you need something, you can just reach over and be like, oh, that was good. So it's important. It's totally part of the process.
Yeah, and I think that, it's so funny. Someone said to me, if you have a favorite toilet paper, bring it, because you might not find it, and you might just feel the need in certain moments to have something like that. That was so funny.
I will say, John, anyone that wants to come to Portugal and wants to say hello, you can bring Reynolds wrap, because I've never seen foil anywhere that is as bad as this. It's like you put anything on it, it rips through. It's like this skinny little stuff. So yeah, Ziploc bags, foil.
That's amazing. Colleen, just for people who came in late or want to follow up on that, we talked about Portugal specifically, and the kind of main visas, if I understand it, are the passive income visa, where you have to be getting some sort of regular income that is not necessarily employment based, but it could be. But and then there is the nomad visa, where you're kind of working remotely. Someone was asking about let me see if I can find it again. We'll talk about that. When can they? Oh, someone was asking about being retired and taking their benefits now. How does that work with their with a D7, for example?
So you're saying if they're taking their benefits, they're retired right now? I'm sorry, there was a little bit right when you.
They're taking their benefits and wondering how. Okay, posting again. What about Portugal taxes? Oh, this is U.S. retirees on Social Security and investments. Heard they're expensive.
So again, that's a personal, everybody's circumstances are different, but yet you will be, no matter what country you go to, you will be taxed in both your residence country, most likely, and in the United States for sure. In Portugal, you are subject to the dual taxation treaty, which allows that to be offset, and there is other deductibles. It's a very complicated question, and it's not apples to apples. So in this case, I would suggest reaching out so we can go into a deeper dive, but all of your income has potential to have a tax implication, and you just need to sit down and do the budget and understand what that means.
And thank you. And I found that other question was from Jennifer. We're both retired. If we start taking distributions from our retirement stuff, does that count as income for visa purposes?
Yes, distributions, as long as you've been taking it physically and having 3 months of proof of deposit, and then you can prove that it's going to be consistently distributed for 1 year at least.
Great, fantastic. Okay, let me see what we have here. How hard is it to enroll in classes to learn Portuguese?
Well, it's not. They actually offer free classes, so they want you to learn Portuguese. There are options that you can go to, and you can also pay for tutors, and you can also pay for schools that will be able to walk you through the levels if the free classes are not to the time that you want. So there's lots of options. Be patient with Portuguese. It is not as easy for folks in some cases as other languages, and Portuguese are very kind. They are not a country that judges you harshly for your attempts, but they really appreciate it when you do try.
Fantastic. And friends, those of you who are here, and many of you are just jumping in, a couple of thoughts that I want to reiterate. Colleen and I are talking about the idea of knowing whether to stay or go. It's not really black and white as the title, obviously. And we want you to be thinking about the myriad of concerns that you might have, considerations in this process. And as someone living in America, I'm making America as beautiful as I can make it. And for me and my family, it's about, deciding when is a time where I might not feel safe. And for every one of us, that's so different. When do I feel like I want to make this move? And so if you're watching this and you're just generally wondering, I am hopefully this is helpful for you to be thinking about. It is quite possible financially. I may not have thought it was. And logistically, it may feel like a nightmare, but there are places and companies like Portugal, the place, that can walk me through it. So Colleen, talk about the fears, the overwhelming idea, and then how you sort of funnel that down into something manageable.
Well, the fear is real. It's a big change. There's just no way around it. This is going to be one of those life-changing events if you decide to move abroad. Less than 7% of all Americans move abroad, and that's including corporate transfers and the military. So that's significant. If you make the move, you're definitely going to be in a small percentage of people that have decided to do this. The fear that it comes around about the financial instability, the concerns that you haven't judged it correctly are well-founded. And I do understand, because it's something not only did we go through, but also we see all the time. But what you can do to mitigate that and to feel a little more confident is to dig in first to your plan. And when I mean plan, you don't even have to put a country into the plan, but all countries, if you want a long-term residence, you're going to have some kind of income. Okay, so that's the first thing. Do you have a stream of income that you can do abroad? What does your savings look like? And then there's another variable here, is the currency. Currency exchange is also something that you have to be really aware of. And it would really be good if you're in the early stages of thinking about locating elsewhere, is start becoming educated in currency, because the euro to the dollar, if the pound to the dollar, there are so many things that are going to impact what you have. And if you're thinking about moving abroad and you've been looking specifically at Europe in the last, say that you've been thinking about it for 12 months, last year, it was almost 1-to-1. You could almost get a euro for $1. Now we're pushing to like 1.13. My currency advisors, my currency exchange partners are saying they are anticipating that in 6 months we could be at 1.23. There's a lot of instability in the market that causes the currency to devalue, and that's something that you can't set aside. So there's areas where you can plan before you know what country you're going to by getting educated. Understand those kind of pieces of the puzzle. Check with your banks, find out where you're banking, what your requirements are for your investments. Some investments you can hold when you're an American living abroad, some you cannot. So if you're getting ready to retire and you're looking at your investment strategy, talk to your investment counselor and say, look, I want to move abroad. Where can I start now? What can I do with my funds? And what do I need to be aware of that might trip me up? There's a lot of things that can help get you prepared that you can do right there in the States before you make the decision.
Okay, fantastic. I got a message. There's a message down here. I'm see if I can find it again. And maybe Fiona, if you could help us with that. It says, John, there was a repost from Tracy Enos at 1:45 that would be nice if Colleen could address in a generic sense. So see if you can get to that. Diane asked, John, what is your red line? What would cause you to leave the US? Well, gee, Diane, it might be someone knocking at this door, which I wouldn't be surprised one day. But for me, Diane, it's really, I think for every human being, it's something that you won't know until you know. And until you weigh all the variables and you try to be wherever you are. I think I'm here in the US, so that's where my intentions and my energies are. It doesn't mean I'm not exploring. And for me, I'm here until such point that I decide I can't be, that it's not sustainable or it's not healthy or safe enough. And again, no one can decide that for you. But I think what I'm hoping this is doing, and for Colleen's services, for example, will help you get a sense of a lot of the variables so you can really focus on the heart of the decision. You can take out the sort of logistical matters and say, on a heart level, what do I feel like I need to do?
And it's important for people to note, if you wanted to give us a call and talk to us, we're not trying to sell anyone on Portugal. That's never the intention. In fact, our goal is to help you understand the reality of what you need to prepare for. And we have many calls with folks where we say, I don't think this is going to work for you. We're going to be the first person that's going to tell you that, unfortunately, if you don't have the things you need to make the move successfully. Elderly parents, it's possible. I saw a question running by on the comments there about what do you do when your elderly parent is in the States? You can absolutely travel back to take care of them. We have a lot of situations where folks are moving back and forth. And even if you're in certain flex times with your visas, you can still get a compassionate allowance to be able to go back and care for a parent. So there's a lot of ways. Portugal is And countries with the visas, they're not trying to lock you down. What they're trying to do is protect from fraud. They just don't want people to say they're living there and getting all the advantages of living in Europe, but not investing in the culture, the community, and being part of the country. So if something emergent happens and you need to go, you work with the consulate, you work with immigration, and there's ways to make that happen. It's different though. You're going to be a person as an immigrant. And for what we're seeing in the United States right now, I will tell you that the amount of people we talk to that are so scared because the concept of being considered illegal. What if my visa has too long? What if I'm there and my document expires? It is horrifying to see what's happening in the United States, and then to see it from this side, from Portugal, and watch back what's happening. It's gut-wrenchingly sickening to see what's going on. And it's spilling over into every client's conversation, every guest that contacts us and says, I don't want to be illegal. What happens if my paperwork, will I be deported? They don't do that. Yes, they have a problem with immigration right now. And yes, they're overloaded as well. And they're trying to work through their systems, but nowhere in that process are they even considering behaving the way that we're seeing. If you don't have your paperwork in Portugal, it's a constitutional requirement that they complete the paperwork. They're out of compliance, not you. So they don't use alien as a term. They don't call you an alien. They don't use illegal. They may say documents expired or your residency is expired, things like that, but they don't put those terms on you. So it's really important to know the lens that you're feeling immigration through in the United States is entirely different elsewhere.
Yeah, and someone asked early on, we've seen stories about a city like Barcelona showing some hostility toward immigrants, and what that's like. That your perspective of that, what's Portugal's perspective, and just in general, what are your thoughts on people who are concerned they won't be welcomed?
Well, it's a weird situation. The one in Barcelona was targeting tourists, especially the Barcelonians seem to be particularly riled up and upset with people. They have 15 million tourists a year in Barcelona. That's insane. And it's definitely putting a strain on the city. But do I agree that they should be taking water guns and torturing people at lunch, with that? Absolutely not. There have been protests because what they want to do is get the government in line with not over offering accommodation licenses, Airbnb licenses, with making sure there's a balance. There is not a balance right now. It's terrible. I completely agree. I mean, people are getting pushed out of the center, but it's a worldwide problem. It is not just applying to Portugal. It's a worldwide problem. Europe is definitely feeling it, and they need responsible tourism. And I hope they do continue to reduce the cruise ships that are coming in. I hope that they do put additional city taxes to be able to kind of manage what it costs to repair the cities after people leave. But do I agree with any kind of violence? Absolutely not. But I can feel the pressure. I mean, you go to these cities and Lisbon has 21 tourists to every local. That is a lot when you're there. So when you're in season here, especially, you feel it, and you feel the stress. And again, being a good representative of your country and really thinking about the people that are serving you and helping you and what they're going through, and they watch you having a great time and they can't even live in their own city. Of course, they're getting frustrated. And then one thing, I'll get off my little soapbox. Please, please, please don't say Portugal's cheap. Don't say how easy it is to live here, how cheap it is, because the people that live in Portugal are under a lot of strain. Minimum wage is tough. They have housing costs that are difficult. It's difficult for people to find work in the smaller communities. And it's really hard for them when Americans come over and are like, oh my God, it's so cheap here, da, 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 da. Like, we have to be conscious of our surroundings and what that feels like to the locals.
Great. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour here, unbelievably, but so we're going to start to wrap things up. But I wanted a couple of things, folks. Someone said, I would like to get the recording and I'm unclear how to do it. Please advise. How can people get the recording?
Everybody that signed up with their email, they'll be able to we'll send that recording out. That'll go out by probably tomorrow. Actually, it's a holiday tomorrow. It's a holiday in Portugal tomorrow, so you might get it by Friday, depending on how everything uploads, because we're at 8 o'clock here, Portugal time. And the other thing is if for some reason you jumped in with someone else and you weren't on the email list, just send us a message on portugaltheplace.com on our website in the email and just say, hey, can you send us a recording? And we'd be happy to send that out. So not a problem at all. And we'll get that out to everyone that signed up for sure.
Great. So I'm going to just say to my viewers, my followers, readers, thank you for being with us for this. It's just, these are important questions to ask. They're things that we don't necessarily feel we can talk about to everyone. And so I'm really grateful for your time, your presence here. And really to Colleen, thank you for doing this. And what would you, share to everyone who's watching to kind of close us out today?
I would really encourage you to pursue what it is that you're thinking about, whether an interstate move, whether you're looking at a move abroad. If you're feeling restless and this is something you want to consider, pursuing it and learning and educating yourself is not a commitment. But it is such an amazing experience to be somewhere different, to find something else and have a new chapter. Just put that toe in the water and start educating yourself. And if we can help in any way with Portugal, if there's anything we can do, please feel free to reach out. We are absolutely honored and happy to be able to participate in that learning journey.
Yeah. And so friends, send your Portugal specific questions, contact Colleen and her staff, and they'll help you out. If you have general, just philosophical, existential questions, you can just reach me on social media and I'll do my best to speak into those.
Yeah, and we're all over social media as well. We'd love the followers. We'd love to get people to have more information. And if you want to see what we're up to and you want to be kind of like watching from the side at first, we share a lot of what's going on directly with our clients. So please feel free to follow us on whatever platform works well. John, this has been so much fun. I hope maybe we do something else like this again. And I see Jenna saying how to contact Colleen. You can, again, on the Portugal the Place website, you can go to portugaltheplace.com and email, and you can reach out and we'll get connected. I know that John will be talking again soon. So
absolutely.
But this
maybe I'll be 10 feet from you, but we'll see.
One would hope. But again, thank you so much for all of this. And everybody's been great. I love the questions, and I know we could do this for hours. So thanks for your time again, too.
Oh, quite welcome, friends. Well, be good out there, and we will see you all soon.
All right. Take care. Bye now. Bye-bye.